Happy Hump Day and welcome inside the Shot Callers eSports Studios. Eric Kummel here with Mark Horner, and today we're going to be talking EU LCS. After our power rankings, we're going to be making some predictions, go through MVP, Rookie of the Split,
of course,
and who's going to be in those finals. We'll be answering your questions later on in the show, as we always do, so make sure you're sending those in throughout the show. But first, a little bit, there's actually quite a bit of news around the league scene going around right now. And we got to start with the man, the myth, the legend, that is Tyler1. He made his return.
Boy, was it ever a return.
It was quite a return to streaming, unbanned by Riot, and really just the first video of him on Twitch. The first couple minutes of his initial stream. If you haven't checked it out, I'm sure you have. This guy had so many viewers, but his first little bit of his stream was amazing. So here it is. So he's cosplaying as Draven. He comes out with a smoke machine, some epic music. He's just laughing. He's breaking chains.
He shows it. He's free. He's
free.
Ready to get out on that rift and bring on the Draven. I love seeing that, man.
And we just got to say, he came out and at points had almost 400,000 viewers on Twitch, which absolutely destroyed Faker's record, which was, what, 235?
Maybe Faker needs to go and get himself banned and be toxic, and then come back to Twitch and get all those viewers back to break the record again. Incredible stuff from Tyler1. At one point, even by the most conservative estimations, this guy was making over $40,000 an hour, which is insane for playing League of Legends. Not even being a professional, this guy has really created something for himself, and I think it deserves some praise.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, people are going to be upset that people are kind of praising this guy who was toxic and just kind of overall a jerk. That was kind of his persona. But you've seen he's definitely made some strides, and you saw in his stream, his first day of streaming when he was still wearing that ridiculous Draven cosplay. But in some of those games, I mean, he was still his normal self where he's yelling and pretty much screaming, saying he's going to hard carry all these games. And you can tell he's still pretty damn good mechanically, especially on that Draven.
This man knows how to play Draven, that's for sure. It might be the only thing that he really knows how to play, but he definitely can play it. You know what? There are some fair criticisms for Tyler1 in his past and how he got to where he is now. But I think the credit is due for how he's, you know, quote unquote reformed and managed to earn his way back into Riot's good graces. And I think you can see the entertainment value provided by the Tyler1 Invitational, and let alone the strong numbers for his return back to Twitch, that the League of Legends community finds him somewhat entertaining. And I think that it was a great show to see him come back.
Yeah, and you got to give him credit, because most people, you get permabanned from a game, you're done. You're not going to play that game. You're like, whatever.
Let alone 17 times getting banned.
You'd say, whatever, I'll play a different game or won't play games, anything like that. But he stayed within the scene even without really playing that game. And yeah, you mentioned that Tyler1 championship. He's actually really provided quite a bit of high quality content for people within the scene while still being permabanned, which is one of the main reasons why when he came back, it was such a welcoming experience from the community.
Right, and to even think that, you know, Riot Games had to go all the way to China to get the Elder Dragon out for the finals, and Tyler1 just in his basement had the dragon already appear. So
with the cut-off sleeves on the dress shirt,
it is impressive, nonetheless.
And Mike, all distorted, continues to be. I'll even say his second day of streaming, he still had around 100K viewers. Pretty consistently.
He's no quick shot or Deficio, but he brings his own style and unique flair to the casting.
Yeah, he's a great play-by-play as well. Some other news, Doublelift got an article published in the Players Tribune. Not the first league player to do that. Faker had one a couple years back. So Doublelift talking about, you know, revenge against TSM and everything. But the main headline here isn't about what he wrote in that article. It's the fact that Keith Olbermann sent out a nice tweet about this. Keith Olbermann, formerly of MSNBC, now works with ESPN. He said, 3 years in, that's awfully early to have jumped the shark by publishing pieces by snotty rando kids playing children's games. Okay. Snotty kids. By the way, the word snotty sounds so much more offensive than it actually is. I don't want to be called snotty.
You could call him a jerk or entitled, anything of these things that you might be thinking of when you hear kind of snotty, but it's even grosser, just that word and that description for it.
Guys like Liquid Liquid's Steve answered to this. Jack from Cloud9 responded. Mark Merrill. Plenty of guys. Jacob Wolf from ESPN. They were all saying basically, you know, that great meme from Homer's dad from The Simpsons saying, old man yelling at clouds.
Oh,
there was obviously a lot of backlash to this comment, but I think Keith Olbermann, that's kind of his thing. He just says things that he knows are going to stir controversy and gets people talking about it. And look at this. We're talking about it.
Yeah, it definitely is successful in that regard, but he's the guy that likes to stir the pot more or less now, and he was, you know, admired back in his time at MSNBC for being, you know, someone with a lot of integrity to what he would say, and now it's kind of coming in as he's the guy that's trying to pick these fights, and picking a fight with the League of Legends community and esports in general, not a very smart call. And yeah, it does come off as kind of an old man who wants to yell at new things, and it's not really the smartest of moves that you would have to think of, and let alone, you know, calling this a children's game doesn't quite fit. The League of Legends final had over 57 million unique viewers for the finals, and that is something that is over, you know, gets way over the Stanley Cup finals and even outdraws World Series games and comes close to equaling some of the lower rated Super Bowls. So this is a major event and something that shouldn't be just regarded as a children's game, and I think that Keith Olbermann has definitely missed the mark with his comments.
Well, I mean, it is a children's game, but so is every professional sporting league pretty much. They're all kids games. You all play them when you're kids. So.
Well, it's a children's game in the way that Lego is recommended for 8 to 14-year-olds, right? Like, yeah. Maybe it helps, but...
Lego is timeless, man.
Hey, that's always on my Christmas list for sure.
Yeah, there's no age limit on Lego. Getting into that actual article that Doublelift wrote, you know, I thought there were some interesting points. Basically, the most interesting line to me was the very first line where he says he found out that TSM was looking to replace him via Reddit. Which is...
That's a harsh way to find out.
That's pretty harsh when you're that involved with the team. But I mean, for a guy like Doublelift, basically, if you didn't read the article, he's saying, he was upset the TSM let him go. He wants vengeance on him. To be some mental things.
Some real interesting conversation, you know, coming from this, that you saw that TSM really didn't have this confidence, and, you know, something that you would expect from them with so many veterans on that roster. Someone to really, you know, be able to step up in these moments and acknowledge that there's some nerves here, but that, you know, what you've proven throughout, you know, your terms in the LCS and as well as, you know, your boot camp leading up to Worlds, that you are a strong team and one that can do well at Worlds. And that just wasn't there for this team, and you saw how much that impacted them in their performance. And then one of the other great things that you saw from Doublelift is this is exactly a Doublelift piece. This is all you could have ever expected from Doublelift. Everyone else is trash except for him, and it's what I love to hear from Doublelift coming into this season. Gets me a lot of hype coming into this TL and TSM matchup. Yeah,
and one other thing he did mention about Worlds is just the amount of pressure that these NA teams feel having to perform for that region, because everyone from NA is always behind them, and they want NA to prove that they're a basically legitimate region at some of these international competitions at Worlds, and they feel that pressure. And, you know, he basically said as soon as they lost that first game, he saw a huge shift in mentality within the team, which, well, hopefully for NA fans, that changes with all these roster shakeups.
Right, you can feel, you know, sympathy for that and say, you know, yeah, it really does suck that the community can be pretty toxic and tough on you sometimes, but with the good comes the bad, and you have to be ready to take that if you're underperforming. And I think that for North American teams, that stigma is not going to go away until someone steps up and does perform on the world stage.
And usually it comes down to Cloud9, getting out of groups. That seems to be the theme most years.
Well, let's aim for a little higher. Maybe let's aim semifinals eventually.
Whoa.
One year.
Settle down. Let's move on to the really good stuff. The EU predictions for 2018. We recently did our power rankings for the EU LCS, and now I know a lot of people are down on EU coming into this year because NA was just absolutely insane. I mean, there's 9 players in NA that are on the same team they were in 2017 summer.
That's wild.
That's absolutely insane. But there was still a shift in EU. Every team made at least one roster move. And first prediction we want to look at, there's plenty of new up-and-coming talent in EU. That seems to be the theme. They groom the talent there, then they come over to NA for the money. But there's a lot of young guns coming up in 2018. So Rookie of the Split is the first prediction we're looking at here. And, you know, for me, there's basically 2 guys that it's coming down to. And that's going to be Mini Troupax and Upset on Shulka and Vitality. There are a lot of other guys like Sheriff and Cadril, but I think these two AD carries are the guys to be looking out for in 2018. You look at these numbers in the 2018 promotion tournament, number 1 and 2 in the entire tournament.
Doesn't get better than that.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And they're obviously the featured carries on their squad. Maybe not so much now for Upset on Schalke, but these are the main 2 guys I'm thinking.
Right. And I think that when you look at these 2 guys, for me, my guy who I think will be the rookie of the split in Europe, it's got to be Mini Trupax. He is easily, in my eyes, the best Portuguese AD carry to ever come out. And I think that he is somebody with the guidance of Yamato Cannon on Vitality, is someone who will come into the scene and not have the early struggles that we've seen from rookie players usually. And I think that this is a guy, he's going to come right in and have an impact strong for Vitality out of the gates. Yeah,
and that makes sense, especially when he's got 4 or 3 teammates that he had on Giants. But I got to lean towards Upset for Rookie of the Split. He's in a similar scenario to when Sven or Niels came into the scene with Origin, where he's surrounded with veteran talent in guys like Vizicachi, Vander in the bottom lane, who he's played with before, by the way, and also a guy like Nuktuk in the mid lane. So I don't think there's going to be as huge a pressure on Upset, and he's going to be able to really be one of the main carries, if not the main carry on the squad. And with so many guys helping him out, I think you're going to see really how much talent this guy has. He's been dominating solo queue. He already has, again, a bit of synergy with Vander because they did play together before. And I think he's just pretty much in the dream setup. He's the only remaining guy from that Schalke lineup that played in the promotion tournament, and he was the standout player on that squad. So I think he's got a really good opportunity to carry a lot of these games, and he's in a perfect position to take home some hardware this year.
Right, and I think, if you are going to look at any other rookie other than Mini Trupac, I think you do have to look at Upset. He's probably the only other guy that I would think would really qualify for being, someone you would put up for that Rookie of the Split award right away. When you're looking at Crepo as well, helping him on the coaching staff for Schalke is something that I think can't be underrated. Even when you're talking about the help that he will get from his veteran teammates, I think talking about Crepo as a coach there is something that could help him beat my guy out for that Rookie of the Split.
Yeah, and going back to Mini, I mean, if you're going back to the promotion tournament, people would say, he outperformed Upset in that tournament. You saw some
pretty slim margins.
Yeah, you saw those very similar numbers, but if you actually look into the games and the head-to-head, Mini probably did have the better performances in those head-to-heads. But I mean, you look at their LCS rosters and Upset's on a totally different team. Mini, 3 of the 5 guys have 0 LCS experience on Vitality. You're just looking at Gilius and Cabochard. And Cabochard, he hasn't been that great really the last year on Vitality. He wasn't that carry threat that we're used to seeing, so there's going to be a little bit more pressure on Mini Trupax to carry on his team than there is on Upset, and I think Upset takes it.
Well, I think whoever you're picking, I think it's actually a really exciting split coming up in Europe to look at the young new talent coming through.
Yeah, again, honorable shout-outs to Sheriff and Cadril on H2K. I think they'll both put up really stellar performances as well. Just not quite as good as Upset.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next one. We got the juicy one, the big boy, MVP of the EU LCS in 2018. Summer, it was reckless, and you had all the guys on Fnatic putting up absolutely absurd KDAs, but it's a totally different landscape coming into 2018. So who do you like for MVP?
Well, I'm telling you, Eric, it's going to be the man in the mid lane, Perks. He is going to be the MVP this time in spring. And I'm telling you that this guy is truly going to show for everyone why we've been hyping up Perks kind of the last 2 or 3 seasons now. The way that he has shown what his mechanical strengths are in the mid lane position, his depth as far as his champion pool, and as well as his ability to just absorb intense amounts of pressure from the jungle pairings in Europe. And I think that you're going to see this year with a combination of Jankos instead of Trick helping him out, we're going to see Perks reach some incredible numbers, similar to what we saw Jensen reach in North America with the help of contracts this past year.
Yeah, and again, there's going to be so much pressure on Perks with an entirely newly revamped G2 lineup.
As the only guy still there, absolutely.
The only guy left. He's clearly the captain of this team. Even Ocelot said that in a little announcement video he did. So if that doesn't put even more pressure on you, I don't know what does. I agree with you that G2, the MVP is going to be coming from G2, but I think it's going to be that man who's going to be jungle mid lane duo with him. I think Jankos is really going to have a field day on this G2 roster. He and Perks have a very interesting relationship. They used to have Twitter wars and great banter on the analyst desk. I think they are going to far and away become the best jungle mid lane duo, and I think just the pressure that Perks is going to be able to add, and Jankos as well, is just going to open up these other lanes, and Jankos is going to have so many options where to go in this lineup, and I think that he's going to be able to be hounding opposing junglers as well. And you know, regular season Jankos is great. It's in the playoffs when you really see him. A little bit of choke stuff coming out.
We haven't seen the Jankos that we want to see in the postseason, but I think that if you're gonna go, if we're gonna go off of Perks as an MVP pick coming into this season, I think Jankos is a fantastic one. He is arguably the best Western jungler right now, and he's someone that I think, with the changes that have been made to this preseason and the champions that will be in meta play will be usually more aggressive, and I think that he is someone that can fully take advantage of that.
Yeah, and obviously we don't even know what the meta is settled on. We got the first patch of Season 8 coming out, and if it's going to be fully tank, Sejuani and Gragas in the jungle, it's tough to get MVP when you're playing stuff like that. You got to see Jankos on, you saw him on the Kayn, on the Kha'Zix, stuff like that, and then you'll really be able to take over some of these games. But listen, MVP is super tough to pick coming into 2018. We both think it's going to be a guy on G2. I think they're going to have...
There are plenty of other MVP options out there remaining in Europe, and you don't even have to go too far away from the top level teams. You can look at Fnatic, and you know, if Caps decides to step it up from his Worlds performance, we could see someone getting an MVP there. Reckless obviously is the returning MVP, and then even moving off of that, you can go to Misfits and looking at Alphari and Maxlor in that top jungle position. Those are two of the strongest players in Europe, so there are definitely a lot of options here for someone to really step up and take that most valuable player award.
Yeah, and Perks and Caps are two guys that, with so much EU mid lane talent leaving, these guys should really put themselves at the top of that mid lane talent pool in EU, and they might be fighting for MVP if Caps can play a little bit more consistently. But I feel like in the regular season, because the MVP is a regular season award, I think Jankos is going to come out on top. But we're both on the G2 hype train, even if I predict they're going to struggle a bit early on, and people will start losing their minds when they drop a couple games in the first couple weeks. But by the end of the regular season, they'll be back on track and looking strong heading into playoffs.
Yeah, it's G2. How could they not be looking strong? They kept together. Perks is the only one there, and they managed to piece together here a roster that is strong around him, and I feel like they should be right up there.
Yeah. So we looked at a couple regular season awards. Let's go through our magical, imaginary playoff run. We'll skip ahead to the finals. Who do we believe is going to be taking place in the EU LCS Finals 2018? G2 going for 5 in a row. Fnatic trying to win their first time since 2015. Or does someone not named G2 or Fnatic finally win an EU LCS title? Only one other time, Alliance.
That's hard to believe. But I have to think that out of the entire EU LCS, I see 5 teams being able to really compete for this. You have Schalke and Splice are two of kind of the outsider teams that I'm looking at that need to prove themselves for different reasons, but they do have the talent necessary to be the champions of Europe. But when you're talking about who I really truly want to predict and believe is going to be there, it has to be Misfits and G2. These are the two teams that I feel are the most complete in Europe right now and are definitely going to be the ones that I find have the most potential to improve upon what they already are. If you're looking at Fnatic, I think that they are a strong team in themselves, and I think it really does depend when you're looking at how much have Broxah and Caps improved over the Worlds performance, and then also which Soaz are you going to get? Are you getting Soaz week 1 of Worlds where he almost has no farm as Maokai, like 5, 10 minutes,
worst player
15,
in the tournament.
How many minutes into that game? It was awful. And then, week 2, turns it around, and this guy on Dog Champs is performing outrageous stuff and getting great wins in that top lane. And I think that will be something for Fnatic to look at. But predicting here, it's going to be that strength of Misfits, top and jungle synergy, as well as the excellent Hans Sama. If he gets to play on that Xayah, look out. That guy is dangerous. And then G2, Perks, Jankos, that whole thing, it's all going to work. I think that's your final.
G2 Misfits?
G2 Misfits.
And G2 takes it.
Yeah.
5 in a row. 5 in a row.
Hey, man, it's a dynasty. What else do you want?
Whole new roster. Perks is the best. of all time if that happens. I mean, yeah, 5 in a row would be absolutely incredible, and if Perkz does that with 4 entirely new players, then yeah, this is the EU team. I see the streak of 5 coming to an end for G2.
Sad
not
times.
getting 5 in a row, very sad times, you know. Spoiled fans, spoiled G2 fans not seeing another EU LCS title. I don't even think G2 gets to the finals.
Ooh.
Now, I got Jankos getting that MVP award, but
Predicting some playoff struggles.
I think he will get it on track, get back on track in the playoffs, and he'll overcome some of these playoff jitters that he gets. But it's not going to be in spring. I think come summertime, you'll see G2 back where people expect them to be. But I think in spring they don't get to the finals. I'm looking at Fnatic getting to the finals. This is a team that they were inconsistent to close out 2017 in their first initial playoff run in EU, and then obviously the first week of Worlds. But I mean, you saw the potential ceiling of this team, and it's pretty high up. You talked about Broxa and Caps. If they can compete and get to the level that we saw at times throughout the split, I think if they can stay at that level, then they'll be fantastic. And I think that they're going to win for the first time since 2015. Who are they going to beat? I'll tell you who they're going to beat. Oof. I have been riding the Schalke hype train.
Oh boy.
Since the power rankings, I thought this team,
The Schalke tank
could definitely make some noise in the playoffs. I think they meet Fnatic in that finals after knocking out G2. Love how hypothetical all this is. But I think Fnatic, Schalke, and Fnatic takes it in a close series. But I'm all aboard the Schalke hype train, and I think people will see, wow, Nukduck is actually a top-tier mid when he's got a team around him, surrounding him, that's actually pretty solid. He hasn't had a good team in a very long time.
I think that this is definitely a team, though, that can show off his skill and help show that he really is one of these players. But I think when you are talking Fnatic, and I do look at Caps as that player that I want to see improvement from, he was someone that really was outclassed on the world stage at Worlds, and I thought that that was something that was disappointing from someone who expected more out of Fnatic and wanted to see more out of quote-unquote baby Faker. You never really saw those moments, but what you have seen from Caps throughout his play in Europe was a lot of those dominating outplays that he can make, and that does lead to those type of nicknames. And I want to see, you know, more of an explosive start from him this year. Yeah,
and with Caps and really Fnatic as a whole, a lot of these games they were losing, they just seemed to be way too passive. Like that Longzhu game where they had 5 kills and won in 20 minutes, that was insane. Some of the games in the EU LCS playoffs, they were just kind of sitting back, letting Misfits or whoever do whatever they wanted, and they just slowly lost the game. There was no proactive plays by them. So you bring in a guy like Hylissang, who, he's not going to do that. If a game starts playing out like that, he's just going to get bored. He's going to try a flash engage on whatever champion he is, which, sure, at times he might go 0-5 to start some of these games. He might have a couple int-like games, but I mean, I think overall his playstyle is going to help Fnatic a lot more, and you won't see those passive losses that can be so painful to watch. So I think adding a guy like Hylissang is definitely going to help Fnatic come 2018 spring.
Right, and even with Hylissang's downsides, I still think he's overall quite an upgrade over Jez's, and especially with how he will work with Reckless. I think that was a really great move for Fnatic.
Yeah, and we'll see how they are in actual laning phase, because Hylissang, he hasn't been great in lane the last couple of years on UOL, so...
Not awful.
Not awful.
Just not great.
Solid. Stick him right in that 5-6 mid-tier sandwich.
He's definitely not your bronze 5 support. We can guarantee that.
He's your top 5 support, which is pretty good. In the LCS in your top 5, that is pretty solid. So you got G2 over Misfits in the finals.
Yes, sir.
I'm taking Fnatic over Schalke. 4 different teams. That's surprising.
I'm telling you, Europe's going to be real spicy this year. I think it's going to be some really intense action, and really looking forward to it.
Yeah, don't be sleeping on EU because of all this NA hype. They got better times for when their games are playing, just Fridays and Saturdays.
Right?
None of this Thursday afternoon stuff. Well, afternoon for North Americans like us.
Silly North Americans.
No one likes North Americans. So be watching the EU LCS, because there are a lot of interesting storylines and a lot of totally different looking rosters.
People overlook it far too often. I think that there's quite a lot of fun and exciting personalities to see there, and some really strong League of Legends action.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get to your questions in just a moment. I hope you've been sending those in throughout the show because I want to read some juicy questions. So we'll read those in just a second. But first, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, what player are you most excited about seeing in the 2018 EU LCS?
2018 EU LCS. Player I'm most excited to see.
That's right.
It has to be Jankos. It really does have to be Jankos on G2. We're kind of beating a dead horse talking about it so much. But I mean, this guy really is one of the premier junglers in League of Legends, and it's going to be a real treat, I think, to watch him working with Perks and to operate within the G2 infrastructure that they have built. And I feel like this is something that can help him perform even better, and we're going to see that on the Rift.
Yeah, that's it. G2 as a whole, Jankos is probably the most interesting guy to see how he fits in on that team because you know what Perks is going to get. We'll see with Jankos. For me, I'm still on that Schalke tank. I'm fully in there. I got a couch set up in there. I'm very comfortable. I want to see Nukeduck. I think this is the year where he's been hyped up for, it feels like half a decade. Since he was on Lemon Dogs, people have been like, this guy is a top tier EU mid lane talent. And you know, for the most part, we haven't seen it. He's jumped from team to team. He's been on Rocket, Vitality. And last summer split, he looked very good on a bad Vitality team. So I think now you surround him with better guys, you're really going to see him. He's going to be a top 3 mid this split with Perks and Caps. I think he's very capable of that, and I'm excited to see him prove me right, or hopefully not wrong.
Well, hey, no matter what he does, the Schalke tank is always going to be worth watching just for those memes to come out.
Absolutely.
Always worth it.
Absolutely. Plenty of stuff to look forward to in the 2018 EU LCS. And with that, it's question time. So we're getting out the old trusty tablet. I don't know if you can even call this a tablet.
Probably could.
Okay. First question. EU Spring Playoff Finals, Splyce versus GT. Splyce versus G2, what do you think that final would look like?
Ooh, a Splyce versus G2 final could be real spicy.
People are pretty into Splyce. They believe in that roster.
It's quite a turnaround, right? You're just keeping Kobe there, and I think that he, was the guy that if you are going to keep from Splyce, made a lot of sense as far as what you were trying to build around him. But I think that you do have some question marks, right? Who are you exactly getting from Niski, right? Like, how is he going to perform within this roster and in Europe again? After proving himself against Bjergsen and Jensen and the likes in North America and showing that he does have the ability to go toe-to-toe with these guys. So it'll be interesting to see how he can involve that gameplay more into team style for Splyce to work. But I think that would be quite an interesting match to watch, Splyce and G2.
Yeah, I think the main question mark in that matchup is which kind of Xerxes is playing. 2017 summer, that wasn't great. 2017 spring, Rookie of the Year. He had a fantastic split, was the best player on that UOL team, and he was playing some interesting champions, had Warwick busting out.
I was going to say, that's kind of the thing that I think could be the X factor there possibly is you don't know, and we don't know what the meta is going to exactly be coming up, and which champions are going to be strong, and having someone like Xerxes who plays these champions that are usually a little bit off meta or maybe a little bit out there, I want to see him for sure playing on Hecarim now. Hecarim is a champion that I think is going to be very strong and definitely one who can change games by one-shotting the ADC, taking out that damage threat. And I think that he can be a guy that can facilitate that role, and that could be something very interesting to watch from Splyce.
Yeah, I mean, if those two teams are in the final, you can bet that the meta is carry junglers because I think
that's the only way you get there.
Xerxes and Jankos are probably the top 2 at playing those carry junglers heading in there. But there's a lot of question marks with Splyce. We had them 5th in our power rankings. People thought they should have been a little higher. I'm not so sure. It's a pretty much entirely new lineup, but so are a lot of teams.
I still think they are one of those 5 teams that you can keep in that very competitive group of who you think should be coming out of Europe on top.
Yeah, absolutely. Is the EU situation overblown? EU seems better than last year. I agree, it does look better than last year. I think it'll be more competitive. And just the fact that NA was over the top ridiculous. We mentioned earlier, only 9 guys are on the same team they were in Summer Split, which is ludicrous. So EU is still good. NA, the offseason was just bonkers.
I think the only reason that people really get to this idea is because of the names that you saw leave Europe, right? Mithy and Sven and Fevin.
For the biggest guys.
Right. These are some of the strongest names in European LCS last year. But I think that who you have remaining and what you have here as far as your franchises and teams there, I think that there's still a lot to be very excited about, and not a ton has really left, really, when you look at it and you're thinking, yeah, Mithy and Sven, those were personalities that you liked in Europe as well as the skill there. I think there's more than enough remaining in Europe to remain excited about. Definitely an overblown situation.
Yeah, and like we said, EU is still going to be interesting, so make sure you're paying attention. Master Swag King says, great name. Who are your NA and EU top 3 going to Rift Rivals 2018? Is Rift Rivals a thing again? Is that confirmed?
I'm assuming it will be, because hey, this time Europeans have to come to NA and experience some jet lag.
Jet lag. That's
Get that excuse in case anything goes wrong.
Yeah.
Come to NA for the excuses.
Yeah, I mean, half the league's already here anyways. So top 3 teams. Let's start with EU. I would probably say I'm throwing G2 and Fnatic in there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been talking these guys up forever.
You're gonna go Schalke.
I gotta go Schalke.
I'm probably throwing in Misfits there, but keeping that Fnatic G2 top style. When I'm thinking NA, you can't have TSM not at the top. I'm sorry if you're not a TSM fan, but they have to be there given the success that they've had domestically over the last 3 splits in a row. This is a team that you have to have number 1. Number 2 for me has to be the Dark Horse Empire coming in, Team Liquid, with Doublelift and all that Steve money. It's coming up big time for them. They're going to be number 2. And I think number
3 spots where it gets
number 3 is where you really get interesting, right? Because you have some teams that have made only a couple changes and you don't know what you're going to get from them. Well, I'm going out on a risk here, and I'm thinking that CLG will be that 3rd place team. I think that you will see CLG come back. I think that Biofrost will fit great into this roster, and his synergy with Stixxay and how he will cooperate within the moving of CLG through the map, I think is going to be great.
Yeah, I like CLG. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure where the shot calling is going to come from. I know Darshan has done a lot.
I'm a big Reignover fan too.
Big Reignover fan.
That might be the fanboy in me.
Yeah, I'm not sure how great a shot caller Reignover is. I'm not sure if he can get back to the Immortals Reignover, the Fnatic Reignover. Liquid might have broken him. Playing on a terrible team for 2 splits might have broken him as a player. We'll see how that is with CLG. I like C9 in that 3rd spot. I wish they had kept contracts for that squad, but I don't think Svenskeren
People say that, and I think that Svenskeren will fit in better than Contracts did. I thought that you saw Contracts have a lot of success with Jensen.
Yeah.
And I think that when you talk about the type of jungler that Svenskeren was in the past compared to what we had seen maybe in the last 9 months or so, I think we will see that bring reborn Svenskeren coming in here. And I think you're going to see a strong C9 as well, though.
Yeah, I'm taking them to go to Rift Rivals, if it is a thing. I hope it is, because it was fun.
Licorice will definitely be one of the top laners in NA, and that will be a talent to watch for sure. So
yeah,
if not CLG, as I'm going, C9 is a pretty strong pick.
Yeah, some people think Licorice is going to be terrible. I think he'll hold his own in the LCS. Mark Mejerez has a prediction for us. I hope I said your last name right. If not,
great first name.
My sincere apologies. Terrible first name. His prediction, G2 taking EU Finals and not leaving groups again because Perks chokes. I don't know if Perks choked last year. He was fine.
I don't know if the blame I would put on Perks, but if that's your prediction, hey, that's your prediction. No problems there. But I don't think that this year, I don't think Perks is the guy that I would worry about for choking.
I don't think Perks choked. I don't think G2 choked last year. They got screwed, man. That group that they got drawn into.
When you want to talk death groups, I think that's the group of death right there. And I think that they did. That you could say that you wanted maybe some stronger performances, but I don't think you really can complain too much about what they did.
I mean, they're the only team to beat RNG in the group stage, almost beat them twice, had a pretty close game against Samsung. I think you put G2 in any of the other Western teams' groups, any other group, they get out.
I think that's no question they would get out in that situation. Like, you're talking about beating RNG. This is an RNG team that would and should have beaten SKT if for whatever reason they ever figured out to ban Galio. But other than that, that was a strong RNG team. And so for G2 to get the win against them in the group stage and to play as they did, you can't fault them.
Yeah, you had that RNG team and the team that 3-0'd SKT in the finals. That's a tough group, man.
Oh, and the team that 3-0'd Longshoe as well.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that.
Oh, my goodness. Farronson says, do you think Caps will be the best EU mid laner if he's able to consistently play better or at his level he did at Worlds, and maybe even being the best Western mid laner if he does that?
I don't think he'll be the best Western mid laner.
That's a tough claim these days.
There's a lot of good talent, and I think that that's a great thing. As far as being the best mid laner in Europe, I think that definitely is a very reachable goal for Caps. I think that as much as I've hyped up Perks and talk about him as who I think will win the MVP and how strong I think G2 is, again, if Caps can perform at a level higher than what he did at Worlds, that this is a player that does have the mechanical outplay skills to be one of the best. And I think that if we do see that from him, well, then there you have your answer. He will be one of the best mid laners in Europe.
Yeah, and I think bringing on a guy like Youngbuck on that Fnatic squad is really going to help mentor guys like Broxa and Caps. I mean, Youngbuck was a player on the Copenhagen Wolves. He obviously helped lead G2 to 4 titles. So he's going to be a guy that they should listen to and respect, and I think he'll help with a lot of the mental aspects and just kind of when to be aggressive, when not to be aggressive. I think that's going to help a guy like Caps develop. But being the best Western mid laner, maybe in the future, but I don't see it happening at this year or by the end of this year. With guys like Bjergsen, Jensen, and Perks, even a guy like Febivin, that's some stiff competition.
You gotta take a couple steps before you learn how to run, you know? So
that's right. Right now he's wobbling. He's walking like pretty decently.
He's that toddler that's just got up on his feet, and he's walked a couple times, and he's like, look at me now, Mom, I'm showing you off. But then he falls and hits the table at Worlds.
But the important thing is...
gets back up.
Yeah, he hits his head. He's okay. He's done crawling. That's the important thing.
But he's back, and he's ready to prove us wrong.
He's ready to prove us wrong. Van Moord says, EU viewership has dropped quite a bit over the past few years. Do you guys think that the EU franchising might come too late? Do the views not match up to expectations? Team and investors might not be eager to jump in.
I think there's a lot of things at play with the viewership numbers with the European LCS. I don't think they're quite as bleak as Reddit likes to paint that picture sometimes, but I think it is something to be concerned about. But when you're looking at the trends as far as esports in general, I think you have to really feel confident about where you're moving forward. And as far as franchising coming to the EU LCS next year, I think that you will see those sponsorship dollars there. When you're talking about these corporations and these bigger things like Coke and Pepsi and whatnot, other soda brands. But when you're talking about
that's it.
Not just soda. Yeah. They know their market. But talking about other big corporations like that, they have identified League of Legends specifically as an esport that is valuable to them investing their dollars. I don't think that you're going to see sponsors shying away from the European LCS next year.
Yeah, and I don't think that franchising is necessarily coming too late. It's very good that Riot decided to do that and totally backpedal on this whole 24-team Champions League knockoff.
Very good not to have that.
Very good not to do that. I mean, EU basically has these next 2 splits, this next calendar year, to see how franchising does in NA. Yeah. I assume it'll go pretty well, but there's definitely going to be some issues when it's your first year trying that. EU should be looking at this, studying, okay, this worked, this didn't work, so that when they do transition into franchising, they can have a lot of the kinks already solved before they actually release it. And I think that's a positive that you can kind of sell to a lot of these investors. And you might see some of these EU guys come back when franchising becomes a thing. Sven and Mithy, that's going to be probably a 1-year project with TSM. Febivin, PoE, maybe a similar thing where they do NA for a year to get that franchising money. And once that money's back in EU, I don't see why they wouldn't go back.
A lot of players have said, for a lot of reasons, they do enjoy being in the European LCS, and they don't see any reason why they would want to leave. And I think that that is something that you'll see continue. And I think that when you're talking about franchising, yeah, the money is very important and the stability that brings. But I think the real point that I thought that Riot really got right was getting rid of relegations here. I think not having relegations in Europe anymore, I think that is something that was concerning for a lot of team ownership and everything like that. That stability now that you bring before franchising to bring even more stability, I think it's a good plan for Europe.
Absolutely. It's not as bad as it seems.
No.
It's not as dark in Europe as people are saying. Kyle Schulz says, which NA team do you believe will win this split? You got a lot of options.
These questions are hard because it's not hard from what you actually have to say. It's hard because
what do you say?
What do you say? You're going to be called a fanboy if you say TSM.
I mean,
but when you're talking about the success in North America and you're just looking at that roster and what you're bringing, you know what? There's going to be some struggles early. I'm sure of it with this roster, figuring out exactly how they all gel together. But Mithy and Sven are a phenomenal bot lane. And coming into North America where they will be dominant, and Mithy's ability to shot call and be more proactive playmaker than Biofrost ever was for TSM is going to be something that Bjergsen and Hanser are going to love playing with. And I think that TSM is where you absolutely have to start. But then, as we've brought up with some other teams, and we've talked about it before, C9 is there, TL. There's a lot of strong teams in North America that I think will be vying to take out TSM.
Yeah, I think come summer, there's a very good chance that TSM takes that split. I think even if they don't win spring, and that is the split, I think you got to dethrone TSM and end this 3-split streak of them winning. So I think maybe they drop spring. Maybe I like Liquid if it's not going to be TSM. I'd probably say Liquid just because that's a win now team. I feel like they should mesh quicker than most teams just because there's so much familiarity amongst 4 out of the 5 players.
Right, you're thinking about, you have Top Die Impact, and that's, a proven champion there. And then as well, you have, Smithy, Eugene, the Clean Machine, Pobelter in the mid lane.
Clean Machine.
Doublelift. All guys that have played together before, know each other very well, are friends outside of the game for those years that they were on separate teams, and they are going to gel together great. And I tell you what, Doublelift is so excited playing with Ole. He's a guy that he's saying is coming up with incredible moves, and I'm really excited to see TL as well.
Yeah, I could see Team Liquid winning spring, but I would expect TSM to bounce back in summer. Fred Tholarp says, how's EU going to do at MSI? Again, these are pretty hard without seeing any games from 2018.
Without seeing whoever is there at MSI, first of all.
I will say, though, at some of these international competitions for the whole West, it kind of depends how quickly can these teams gel. Because you look at the top 4 teams in Korea, they've got a couple subs. Peanut going to Longju, which
pretty much all the same.
Isn't Longju anymore. Yeah, it's pretty much no roster changes in Korea, very little in the LPL, so you better hope you're gelling pretty quickly for these Western squads. Otherwise, there's a good chance you're going to get dumpstered, even more so than you usually do.
Because I'm telling you what, those LPL and LCK teams are real deal talent. They're very strong, and they've all been working together and staying together and being very synergized. And we'll be ready for MSI when it comes up. I think when you're talking about Europe at MSI, I think that you do have to look back at how G2 performed, and G2 made it to the finals against SKT last year, and I think that that's something that you have to give them the pat on the back for. Maybe got a little bit of help from some of the other teams underperforming along the way, but I think that you can expect Europe to be not outclassed by anybody at MSI, and I think they'll be very competitive.
Very competitive. That's the dream for Western teams. Smock Ox says, after I saw NA teams, I was like, EU isn't worth watching, and I was sad because I'm from EU. I like EU, but now I think the top 6 EU teams are better than the top 6 in NA.
I think there's a lot of depth in Europe that gets overlooked by people because they're not seeing quite, these flashy names, or it's not,
It's a lot of new names.
Right, and it's not necessarily the names of, maybe the people that you've been watching on Twitch or, seeing in these compilations. And I think that that's something that maybe throws you off if you're the average fan. But when you're really talking about European LCS, a lot of talent is still there, and it's from top to bottom, arguably stronger than North America.
Listen, something EU does a lot better than NA is groom domestic talent, and there's a lot of young talent coming into this EU season, and really just this whole theme of guys like Perks and Reckless who stayed in EU, and it's like, EU pride, we didn't go to NA for the money, we stayed. There's plenty of interesting storylines there for EU. In terms of the strength of the teams, I think maybe the top tier in NA is probably a little stronger than that in EU. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at top 6. You place some 6th place teams against others, or even like a Splice against something like maybe a Clutch Gaming. I think Splice might have the advantage there. It's hard to say. I think they're very comparable if you're looking at the potential playoff teams from EU and NA. There's not as big a distance as people initially thought, myself included. It was like, this NA's insane. EU has no chance. But yeah, when the dust has kind of settled and you're really looking at these rosters, there's not that big a gap.
Yeah, I think the problem also is people are looking more at the names, right? You know, again, these are up-and-coming guys in Europe, and that's something that you do have to give a lot of credit to the European scene for, is that, yes, they're losing talent to North America sometimes more than other seasons, but all that talent is always being replaced consistently, which is something that is pretty incredible to think of. Coming up with these many players to fill in these roles is something that I don't think that Europe will ever have a shortage of. And I think that when you're talking about these names in North America, yeah, sure, you've got Huni, but who else is really going to be also awesome for you from Echo Fox, right? Well, then you look at, you know, over on the European side, it's a lot more of a consistent roster on where your talent is. And I think that that's kind of where people are getting this, you know, mass exodus confused.
Yeah, I mean, both squads, both Western leagues have some pretty solid players. Easy T, top 3 EU players in 2018 spring. Well, you're going to immediately throw Perks in there. He's top 3. You got to think Reckless is going to be there. The guy, after the World's performance, he seems to constantly be contemplating retirement. But he was immediately
popping off like that. You can't be retiring.
He was immediately going to Korea to do just solo queue boot camping with his new bottom lane partner. So this guy's commitment and work ethic is unparalleled. You got to imagine he's in top 3. Then who else you throwing in there?
I want to go. I want to go Jankos, right? I want to go him, but you know what? I'm going to resist. I'm going to back off, and I'm going to say it's got to be Alfari. Alfari in the top lane is going to be surprising people. He held his own at Worlds. Incredible pressure that he took on, and he was dominant in his position. I think that this is someone who's really going to surprise people and show up as one of the top class members in Europe.
Wow, Alfari. That's a bold one. I would go with maybe Jankos or Maxlor.
I was teasing you with the easy
tease with you,
and I gave you right away.
Jankos is a little boring. So I mean, you'd think a guy on Misfits is probably going to be a super solid guy, either Hans Sama, Maxlor, or maybe Alfari. Maybe old Barney steps up huge.
Someone's going to pop off from Misfits. I'm just telling you that, and I'm picking Alfari.
Can you do a top 3 players in every position? Top 3 is quite a few. Let's do top 2.
Top 3.
We'll fire through these really quickly. Top lane. Well, you got to put Alfari if
I'm going
he's top
Alfari
3.
up there.
I mean, guy like Odawamne, you got to consider. Vizicachi. There's your top 3.
Week 2 at Worlds, Soaz.
Week 2. Those are probably your top 4 top laners.
Yeah.
Jungle, Jankos, of course.
For sure.
Maxlor.
Maxlor's going to be right up there.
Maxlor's going to be up there. A guy like Xerxes. If he gets back to
the right meta, Xerxes could be a dominating force in the jungle.
Spring form.
Got Perks in the mid lane, obviously.
Perks in the mid lane.
Caps, if we're seeing that improvement from him, look out.
That's the easiest one for me, I think, is mid. And it's Perks, Caps, Nuke Duck.
Yeah, mid is pretty well locked up as far as when you're looking at any of these. I mean, ADC as well, pretty much as well. You can maybe talk about some of these young guys if they come in and really perform, but there is an established hierarchy over there already. You got Reckless right away.
You got to say Reckless, Hans Sama probably.
Guys have proven themselves on the world stage.
I'm hyping up Rookie of the Split upset. Throw him in there. Throw him in there.
Big cast. And then obviously when you're getting into support.
It's the weakest pool.
It's a different,
heading into 2018.
Different pool, right? Where you're looking at. I think that Wadid is someone that will perform very strong for G2. He's not going to be the shot calling, genius that Mithy was, but I think that he will provide a lot of playmaking skills as well, and I think that I think Hylissang will work very well with Reckless when you're talking about that position.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the weaker pools of support in EU. I mean, is a guy like Kasing going to get back to how he was formerly in the LCS?
We don't know which Kasing we're going to get because it's been so long.
I think Mickey X is going to be one of the top guys heading on to Misfits. He's got a solid squad there, and he's a little underrated on Splice. So that was kind of a top 3. That was a top half.
We just listed a bunch of players. Really.
Kylo Ren, I knew he was a big fan of the show.
Oh my God.
Shout-outs. Looking thick, as always, my boy Kylo.
Ben Swallow.
Do you think that Reckless is going to dominate EU 2018 with Hylissang?
We just told you that I think that they're going to be strong. Dominant might be taking
They're not going to dominate in lane.
a bit of a step too far given the strength of the other bot lanes in Europe. But I think that this is something that you can't deny, that Reckless is always going to be up there and one of the top performers.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to dominate in laning phase, but I mean, Reckless is going to be reckless when it comes to team fighting, and Hylissang might have some games where he's feeding. Another one by Kylo Ren, a little follow-up. Sven and Mithy or Reckless and Hylissang? I'm taking Sven and Mithy. Sorry, Hylissang.
Yeah, no offense. I'm definitely taking Sven and Mithy there. I think when you're talking about, Reckless over Sven, you might have some arguments and some champions that you find, certain guy better on. But I think when you're talking Mithy there's a severe outclass. Not anything against Hylissang. Just that Mithy, I think, is quite a catch as a player.
I mean, as a package, they've been playing together for like 3 years. Hylissang and Reckless, 3 weeks. So a bit of a difference.
Hey, but some of those weeks they were in Korea. Come on, that's got to count for something.
That's true. That's like a hyperbolic chamber.
It's like 6 weeks now.
Yeah. Where would you rate Arrow and Lemon Nation bot lane in the NALCS?
Oh, sad times.
I don't know if I could put them above 10, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really tough.
Maybe I'll give them the edge over the Mats on Golden Guardians.
Yeah, and it's hard because, Lemonation is a guy who's been in the scene for so long and is one of these, figures in League of Legends that I love to watch. And then Arrow is one of the best team fighting AD carries. The only
terrible in lane.
Problem is that he's awful in laning, and you don't get him into a position where he's strong enough to really have that impact in the team fights. And so they
didn't exactly pair him with a support who's going to dominate in laning phase.
And then that's where you get to the real heart of the problem with the connection at the two of them. I don't see them gelling at all. Like, I don't find the strengths of Lemonation or the strengths of Arrow at all matching up, and I don't think that you'll ever reach any of their max potential with them together, which is unfortunate.
I'll give them 9th in terms of bottom lanes.
Well, then who are you going 10th?
Ahead of Matt and Deathly on Golden Guardians, just because Deathly's unproven in the LCS.
I was going to say that's the only way you could justify that because, and I don't mean to be rude to Arrow and Elimination, but...
And I think as the season goes on, you'll actually see Deathly's pretty good in Golden Guardians.
I think Deathly...
Pass Optic.
Will be ahead of that, yeah.
KMN Lucky, what do you think Smithy will bring for Liquid? He's the oldest player on the team. If you were to replace him next split, who can take his spot?
Ooh, replacing Smithy would be a real question. I think that he brings a lot of leadership and shot calling decisions within the playmaking that Team Liquid will have. I think that he was someone that took over that role for Immortals and was someone that provided them the necessary calls to get to where they were last year. And I think that was a large part due to the success that Smithy had. As far as replacing him, I don't know where you'd want to go because this is a guy that provides so much and so much of a veteran presence on your roster. And that's kind of what you're counting on him exactly for on this Liquid team, that I don't know where you go. Where do you think you'd go after that?
Yeah,
Who's available, really?
Yeah, you're not going to move him mid-season. That'd be something they would have after spring. I don't see why they need to. This is the oldest roster in the NALCS, full of veterans. So, maybe...
The retiring age is getting pushed up further and further. Guys are playing longer than ever before.
Guys like Doublelift have been rumored for a couple of years now, but the guy's like 24 years old,
right? Which
they're saying is old in esports.
If we really want to talk about who could possibly replace him, and again, this is all hypothetical and things have to fall into a lot of the right places, maybe you look at trying to snatch up Levi or Moon from these academy rosters, someone who can provide some LCS experience, which would be Moon, and then obviously Levi provides a totally different level of experience and gameplay. I think Levi obviously is the all-star pick that you would want to have if you're replacing someone like Smithy. You would get different play style and different return from him, but as far as skill level, I think that's your best bet if he's going to retire.
Yeah, and you'd obviously have to switch around that roster with the import slots.
Right, the import slot obviously is something you'd have to think about, but hey, it's not like Steve has any shortage of cash to make this move possible, right?
That's true. Van Morid, you think there's a chance that Mithy will go down a similar road as Yellowstar, or do you see Mithy as an overall better player than Yellowstar?
One, I do see Mithy as an overall better player than Yellowstar was at the point of his career joining TSM.
And I think peak.
Yeah.
18-0 season.
And then And then when you want to really talk about it, you really want to look at Sven and Mithy, they brought them over as a duo together for that exact
That's the main difference.
reason. You won't have that lack of synergy, or knowing exactly what each other wanted to do that Doublelift and Yellowstar had for so many weeks into that split. But when you're looking at Sven and Mithy, 3 seasons playing together, they're going to be golden down in that bot lane together. I don't think you have any real concerns for this to be a repeat of the Yellowstar situation for TSM.
Yeah, I think there are some similarities, but I mean, even with that Yellowstar move, they weren't that bad. I know they finished their lowest ever in the regular season. They were 1 game away from winning the split. Went to game close, one team fight away. Stixay got some resets on Tristana, and that was the game. So it wasn't a complete debacle when Yellowstar came over. But yeah, the main difference is the package deal in Mithy and Sven.
You know that Sven and Mithy are going to work together, whereas you saw with Doublelift and Yellowstar, there was a gap missing between the aggressiveness that they needed to have with each other.
And maybe as a whole that team doesn't mesh, but I don't think it's just going to be because of Mithy. It'll be because of a lot of things. Sergio Hernandez, will Bjergsen go with more assassins now that he doesn't have the shot call? That's totally meta dependent.
I think that's meta dependent, but if you're looking at his solo queue accounts, you've seen a higher uptick in the kill percentages that Bjergsen is getting. Seeing him play a little bit more aggressive now, and I think that is something to do with the way that the new runes have come out and worked in favor of this heavy burst damage type of champions. And I think that champions like Zoe that can absolutely sling that paddle star back and almost one-shot you with one hit.
Fun champion.
Yeah, Bjergsen will definitely be taking advantage of that champion and others.
Mikael Mostrag, do you think that significant upgrades in coaching staff in EU orgs will result in better results in Worlds? Because they struggled with macro. I think there's other issues still with EU teams.
Definitely still some other issues, but I find that any additional strengthening stability to the infrastructure of your coaching staff that you can have, and for lack of a better way to put it, replicate what's going on in Korea, I think is a better and fast, a way to get more on a fast track for success. So I do think that the increased emphasis and finances put into coaching and the structure in Europe will have dividend returns for them.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple more questions here before we wrap it up. Couple Levi questions. Victor Aquino and David Veen. Would 100 Thieves sub Levi over Medios and bench Ryu for another mid laner? And do you see Levi playing this spring? No, I don't see him playing this spring. I think the long-term plan is to bring him in, but yeah, they need to find a domestic mid laner to replace Ryu. They could
do that. I could see, in some world, Medios is, lagging behind in his performance, and obviously, we know pretty much guaranteed what performance we will get from someone like Levi in the jungle. So I feel like that is a possibility, but yeah, you do have to then manage around your import slots, and that's something that is a totally different issue altogether for a team to really manage on the fly, and I don't think you'll see that happen. You will see, though, after this split, after Spring Split, Summer Split, or the year after, you're going to see Levi, guaranteed, on the LCS stage. The guy is too good to be contained in the academy teams.
Yeah, it's a long-term plan that he's on the academy team. Last question, Vastenzuri8. How long do you think LoL will be popular as an esport?
I think it's going to be popular for the foreseeable future. This is a game that, constantly is having its updates and roster patches and new champions, and there's always new things going on. And I think with the new life breathed into the game from these runes has really spiced things up. And I feel that League of Legends as an esport is not going to be declining in popularity anytime soon. You're seeing massive increases, over 1.2 billion watched hours over the course of Worlds. That's insane. Billion with a B, guys.
A lot of that because it was in China, which is a huge fan base.
Different boost. I'm guessing that next year's Worlds is going to be in Korea too, so that's also a big boost in viewership. Yeah. But League of Legends as an esport, not dying anytime soon.
Well, especially with all these huge organizations coming in for franchising, it's definitely going to help prop up the league.
What was that? Yesterday I saw TSM ended up with something like $25 million in funding.
Yeah.
That's
pretty easy to cover your franchising
We Rio now, boys. We got the NBA boys here. It's real deal. Everyone wants in on this League of Legends esports.
Seems to be here for a while. But that's all the time we got for today. Thank you so much for sending in all your questions. Before we get out of here, though, we got one last very important thing. I just want to say we've been sitting here for an hour. plus. And I've been very comfortable the whole time.
Extremely comfortable.
Haven't had a sore back, haven't had sore shoulders, anything.
I'll tell you what, I have another brand's gaming chair. This is way more comfortable.
You're talking about the DX Racer.
I'm talking about DX Racer chairs.
Yeah.
Are fantastic.
Yeah, I've been comfortable this whole hour, and if you go on to dxracer.com and use the promo code SHOTCALLERS, you get 15% off your purchase there. It's a free coupon. It's a fantastic time. And as I said, I've been comfy this whole time. Haven't even noticed I've been sitting.
15% off. That's almost, and I mean almost in a stretch way, that's almost 100% off. So,
well, that's quite a stretch, yeah.
Trying to make a sale.
But 15% off, as my grandmother likes to say, it's nothing to shake a stick at. But thank you very much for sending in all the questions. We weren't able to get to all of them, but we do appreciate you guys sending them in. Thank you very much for watching. We will be back on Monday for Get Boosted at 3 p.m. And the LCS 9 days away till it kicks off in EU. So it's been a long off season, but we're finally getting there. Eric Kummel, Mark Horner, thank you very much for watching, guys. We'll see you on Monday.